Phoenician expansion. As Tyre pushed west to expand colonization in the Mediterranean, many of the new Phoenician colonies were modeled after their mother city, Tyre. The location and access to the ocean that Tyre had was a main contributing factor to the city's success, and they seem to have kept this in mind when creating new Phoenician cities. Many of the colonies Tyre created were located directly next to the coast or with a river for easy access to the Mediterranean. The most successful colonies, like Carthage, were located on peninsulas for defense, as well as being near natural resource deposits. Between the years of 830 and 800 BCE, Phoenicians had entered trading routes that reached the island of Sicily and Sardinia, located between western Italy and northern Africa. A local trade network in this part of the Mediterranean had been established in the area since the Bronze Age, but the collapse that devastated the Mycenaeans and the Hittites had caused a loss of connection to the east. The Phoenician addition to this network reconnected the area to the eastern Mediterranean using trade routes through open waters and along their established network of following the northern African coastline. The island of Sardinia was an important connection to the Phoenicians, as it had a large amount of natural resources like copper, lead, iron, and most importantly, silver. In the early 8th century BCE, the Phoenicians had begun to colonize parts of Sardinia to establish a control of these resources and then continue west. The next region that the Phoenicians had their eyes on was the Iberian Peninsula, containing vast deposits of silver in the mountains that had been exposed by a fire. The locals of the area had little knowledge of silver's uses. The Phoenicians wanted and were able to trade for this silver at a very reasonable price. They would bring jewels, glass, dye, and Egyptian pottery in exchange for the silver that was heavily desired in the east. Cadiz. The Phoenician city Hadir, meaning fortress, which we now call Cadiz, was founded approximately 850 to 800 BCE. Cadiz was an important port colony on the Iberian Peninsula. As I mentioned before, the city's geographical location was modeled like other Phoenician colonies in a large natural harbor. The city was also located next to a river that runs inland for miles to the location of the silver mines, making it easy to transport large amounts of the metal. Cadiz grew rapidly due to it being an essential port in the Phoenicians' newly formed Mediterranean trade network. Phoenician merchant ships traveled back and forth between Tyre and fueled growth throughout the Mediterranean. As Cadiz grew in wealth, it also became more independent from the city of Tyre. In order to maintain a level of control over Cadiz, Tyre created an origin story. Supposedly being told to do so by an oracle, the palace of Tyre was instructed to create a new city for Melkart and did so by creating Cadiz. The Greek historian Strabo said that after performing unfavorable sacrifices at 2 different points along the coast, they found a propitious spot where they founded the city and the temple. This origin story directly connected Melkart, the patron god of Tyre, to Cadiz, giving Tyre a religious stronghold over the growing western colony. The decline of Tyre. Assyrian king Tiglath-Pileser III in the 730s BCE decided that accepting tribute from Tyre was not enough, and he wanted to own Canaan and the Phoenician city-states. The Assyrians conquered several Phoenician cities, but they left Tyre intact for its trade. They did, however, take control of Tyrrhenian trade and no longer allowed them to trade with Egypt, impacting heavily on the Phoenician mother city. As time went on, however, the Assyrians in the following decades would lay siege to Tyre in order to weaken its independence, and many of the Phoenicians began to flee. With Tyre and the rest of the city-states in Canaan being taken under control by Assyria, the western half of the Phoenician trade network continued. The silver, ivory, and other goods flowing in the west still were high in demand, and without Assyrian trade restrictions, wealth remained high. One Phoenician city-state, however, soon would prove to be a major player in the Mediterranean and unite the northern coast of Africa. Carthage. Carthage was originally called Kart Hadash, meaning new city, and was founded by a Tyrian princess named Elisa. In the Greek Aeneid version of the story, she is given the name Dido. In 831 BCE, Elisa's father died, and his dying wish was for Elisa and her brother to divide his kingdom. However, her brother ordered Elisa's husband, who was the high priest of Melkart, to be killed, and the people crowned her brother as the sole king. Elisa and some other nobles loaded several ships with gold and other goods, and as was tradition, they made a sacrifice to Melkart to ask approval for them to start a new city. Elisa and the others stopped first in Cyprus and obtained a number of women to bear children for their new colony. Leaving Cyprus, they went to Utica, an already established colony in northern Africa. A local of the city offered her and the others as much land as she could cover with the hide of an ox. She ordered her people to cut the hide into very thin strips and lay the pieces in a line that formed significantly larger perimeter than expected. As a result, the land was given to Elisa to form the city we know today as Carthage. Later, a local king became jealous of Elisa and threatened to destroy the city if she did not marry him. Her response to his demands, I quote from Justinius's detailed summary of Pompeius Trogus' work. Confronted with the greediness of the native king Hierobas, who presses her to make marriage alliance, Elias sacrifices herself on a pyre. Elisa had then saved the city from Carthage from invasion, and she was worshipped as a goddess. Several accounts from other Greek historians of the time claim that Carthage's foundation was in the year 814 BCE. However, this is a topic of debate. What is known for sure, though, is that Carthage was founded around the time of other Western colonies. The city grew rapidly due to its location being the central port of all trade in the Mediterranean. Located on the northern coast of Africa in modern-day Tunisia, all of the ships taking the southern and central trade routes crossing the Mediterranean pretty much had to stop in Carthage. Sometime after the founding of Carthage, the city established trade relations with Tyre once again. An account from Diodorus claims that Carthage sent 10% of its revenue back to Tyre, as other Phoenician city-states did. However, as the Assyrians increased aggression against Tyre, Carthage began its ascent as the dominant Phoenician city. Rise of the Carthaginian Empire. After the fall of Tyre, Carthage became the most wealthy Phoenician colony. Using their knowledge of the seas, Carthage produced a formidable navy and was the most feared maritime military force of the era. By approximately 650 BCE, Carthage became the central power of the Western Phoenician trade network, and had also gained economic control over the areas that solidified their empire. As Tyre had done before, the Carthaginians created new colonies, as well as populated old ones, to expand their hold of the coastline. However, cities within the Carthaginian Empire still governed themselves, and only had to pay tribute and maintain diplomacy with Carthage itself. They would continue other Phoenician traditions like merchant dealing and master artisan work for the next 500 years. The Carthaginian Empire produced embroidered silks, dyed textiles, ivory, pottery, perfumes, and glassware, using the skills mastered by their ancestors. More importantly, Carthage gained complete control over the Phoenician silver mines in the Iberian Peninsula, as well as utilizing their maritime capabilities to establish trade in Britain to acquire tin, a metal that only Carthage had access to. With control of all the tin, as well as most of the silver, copper, and lead, the empire's power and wealth increased significantly as the main producers of metals, with an entire monopoly on the production of bronze. The Carthaginians also spread the phonetic alphabet throughout northern Africa and Spain, as well as spreading their belief in the pantheon of Phoenician gods. Carthage would go on to become one of the most famous empires in history and rival Rome during the Punic Wars. Great Carthaginian generals like Hannibal and his father Hamilcar Barca would be one of the few military geniuses to ever strike fear into the Roman Empire. They would, however, be defeated in 146 BCE and the city completely destroyed. One thing is for sure, though. None of Carthage's great contributions to the world would have been possible without the work of their Phoenician predecessors.